It all started with a bug, a cliff, and a jump. This humble beginning triggered the start of a perfectly contained infection that would spread across an entire population, corrupting a community, causing them to act out in ways that they never would have otherwise. Fear and anger giving way to fruitless fighting in an attempt to protect the idea of perfection that they felt they deserved. And the little guy just kept giving, providing this community with something to believe in, fighting the good fight against overwhelming odds, having to earn every accolade through trial and tribulation. And when they finally reached the peak, having not only conquered the smaller scale, but also standing toe-to-toe with the gods, they sacrificed once more, dooming themselves to a victory whose only outcome is more anger and loss. Now, while this sounds a whole lot like the plot of Hollow Knight, what if I were to tell you that it is instead the tragic tale of their developer, Team Cherry, and how by creating the Hollow Knight, they've created a monster, unknowingly unleashing it upon a gaming world that is not ready to shoulder the incredible load and may never be willing to either. So how was the Hollow Knight the real enemy all along? The history seems almost redundant at this point. Released on Kickstarter in 2014, and seeing a success that led to major improvement opportunities, like hiring another director and a composer, and seeing a full release in early 2017, this indie darling went on to sell over 3 million copies by 2020, every indie developer's dream. And it quickly took over a niche in the gaming world that had no idea how good it could get. You don't have to believe me either, just look at some of the games that were released that same year now. Or Metroidvania specifically that released this last year. Hollow Knight was great then, and it's even better now. The Metroidvania, drawing inspiration from the forefathers of the genre, Metroid and Castlevania, is a genre that consists mostly of a large map where the player character must travel back and forth, unlocking items, powers, or abilities that allow them to access previously locked off areas. Almost like a puzzle platforming game of hide and seek. Most of the time played in 2D, with really amazing examples of 3D Metroidvanias being really hard to come by. I believe Dark Souls 1 and Metroid Prime may be the only no-debate examples of success. Now, if we were to stop there, I do believe that covers the genre. However, especially in the games that excel above and beyond, the bosses, combat, platforming, and map design are typically exemplary. And this is why in a genre that has literally thousands of games in it, there are only a few that stand out above the crowd. Super Metroid, Symphony of the Night, Blasphemous, and Bloodstained typically rise above, with the Grimes, Ghost Songs, Cave Stories, and Guacamelee serving as excellent examples. But Hollow Knight holds the crown in the GOAT debate. Maybe my own biased opinion, but Team Cherry created something that the fans of the genre like myself would compare every other game that released to, even unfairly or unjustly at times. Just a small example, Dead Cells has absolutely no right being compared to Hollow Knight in any way. They're not in the same genre, they're not the same style of game, they're both great games, but in very different ways. But this is what Hollow Knight did to the genre. Every new game was meant to aim for what Hollow Knight had accomplished. And just like every Battle Pass implementation after Fortnite, most either simply fell short or were lambasted and torn apart by us. I do believe that art is subjective. I mean, I absolutely love some bad Metroidvanias like the Mirror of Fate game. But I also believe that there is a standard of art and beauty that exists that we measure everything up to. I could play Mirror of Fate or Metroid Prime 1 every month this year and I would love it every time. But they don't hold a candle to what Team Cherry made. From the lovable creatures to the beautifully designed and varied locations, to the tough as nails boss fights, the soundtrack that doesn't have a single miss, this game almost feels like it was destined to dominate the genre. It took just enough from each of its contemporaries in order to create a perfect experience for most, and enough for almost all to at least try. My wife, who is infinitely more comfortable playing Stardew Valley or The Sims, wanted to play this game just for me showing her the art and telling her a little bit about the story. I warned her that it had crazy platforming and Souls-like level boss difficulty, and she doubled down and was determined to beat this game. Now, she only made it to the Mantis Lords, but given enough time she may have made it even further, and I think that this speaks to just how universal this game can be. On top of that, there are huge communities of speedrunners and challenge runners, fan artists, theorists, and Etsy shop pages devoted entirely to this game. It's a form of media that has naturally expanded beyond the realm of the game itself, something very few get to do. Then, they did the thing. Just 10 days before the 2-year anniversary of Hollow Knight's release in 2019, Team Cherry announced Silksong, a decision that has rocked gaming and will impact development of all games of all sizes from indie to quadruple A forever. And this is no exaggeration in the slightest. I cannot make many statements of absolute certainty, but there has never been an indie game as anticipated as this game. Every indie direct from every developer since that announcement has been flooded with the same question. Where is Silksong? YouTubers and article outlets cry out every time about the lack of information or communication, and this storm of poorly timed announcements, anticipation, frenzied communities, other examples of troubled launches, and the absolute radio silence has festered into something that I don't think Silksong could possibly overcome. Now, when I think of GOATs, one of the qualities that I think sticks out amongst most of them is just how boisterous and loud they can be. From MJ, Federer, Brady, to even those who think they're GOATs like Todd Howard, everyone who I consider to be a greatest of all time is usually outspoken, or so passionate that it sneaks out of them at times. However, much like the Knight himself, Team Cherry are very much a silent protagonist. I do want to side with them, but this is definitely not an instance of no news is good news. We have waited over 5 long years for anything at all, and we still have almost nothing. Not only do I believe that Team Cherry is past the point of no return for communicating, but they're also kind of in a lose-lose situation no matter what they do. Well, almost. If they announce a release date at the end of the summer, and the game's unfinished, the Cyberpunk 2077 or any Bethesda game comparison will be fired off immediately. And if they release it in the next 2 years and it doesn't become the greatest Metroidvania ever, winning every game, design, and sound award, then the wait will have been a waste of everyone's time. Now, I believe that one of the biggest reasons for this is Hollow Knight itself, and it's also why I brought up art being subjective earlier. As I feel like I've made pretty clear already, there are many, myself included, who believe that this game is one of the best that's ever been made. With that, there are 2 sides to every sequel: the expectations of the audience and the direction and the care of the artist. For every Mass Effect Legendary Edition, there's a Mass Effect Andromeda. For every The Last of Us, there's a Last of Us 2. And I want this to be known, I fully stand with the artist in almost all of these instances, even if my opinion doesn't always reflect that. Let's look at the latter example as a sort of widely known tale of caution. I don't think that my opinions of narratives in games would be what it is today without The Last of Us. Neil Druckmann and Naughty Dog had an idea, not one that was super original, mind you, but they took it and created what I think is the most grounded, approachable, and realistic expression of humanity in gaming media. Spoiler warning ahead for a game that is over a decade old at this point. Skip to the next timestamp if you haven't played this game yet, or maybe just pause and go play the game real quick. But Joel selfishly lying to Ellie's face in the conclusion, the journey that you just went through with Joel, and the music that crescendos into his final words may never be outdone.
Swear to me that everything that you've said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
Okay.
It's a perfect example of how we as humans are motivated and how selfish and disgusting we can be in the name of love. Absolute perfection. So why wouldn't or shouldn't an artist paint another picture? Well, in this case specifically, it's because The Last of Us 2 sucks. I don't hate the game, and I definitely don't blame Naughty Dog or Druckmann for taking the swing. If they hadn't made the swing in the first place, we wouldn't have the first game. This game is beautiful to look at, and the gameplay is light years better than the original. but there's just so much believability that's lost within character motivations, and the plotline is all over the place, and it's not something that I would recommend to many. So what? Well, I feel that this example perfectly exemplifies what Team Cherry is going through. With the undeniable fact that games are art, Team Cherry are simply artists. However, they are artists who have a fan base that is ravenous and waiting for the next taste of perfection. They may not be able to create that or even want to at this point, and that expectation must be weighing on them in some way. I'm sure that they look at what they have and question, whether internally or as a group, is this going to be as good as Hollow Knight? Or maybe they're still building the game even after all this time because their vision for the game is to be larger in all the ways that made the original great. Greater lore, greater fights, greater music, and they're not where they want to be yet. Or maybe the game is nothing like the original and they don't know what to do with it. I mean, unlikely, but it's definitely still a possibility. While I don't know how it'll end, and I definitely don't want to hazard a guess either, I do hope that the game will be worth the wait. I have faith in Team Cherry and their art. I do wish that they would say anything, even if it's terrible news at this point, because I feel like I'm stuck waiting, and there's very little left to keep me here. I know the game will release someday, and will more than likely be good at the very worst. And I wish they had the same confidence, or at least enough arrogance to simply come out and say the same. But I'm no longer waiting for the news, or watching the directs. I've moved Silksong to the back burner. The real enemy was always the Hollow Knight, and it always will be. It's going to be a mountain that Team Cherry is going to have to climb, and it's going to be the expectation of every single person who plays the game afterwards. Fair or not, it's the time-old tale of David versus Goliath, and what happens for David afterwards. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit that like button, leave a comment, or share the video. A sub is also greatly appreciated and would mean the world to me. Thank you again, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one.